Hello and welcome to the Love Foundry podcast. We've got James, Daniel, and myself, Sebastian, and we're both here together today. Taylor may join later, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, she's further away. Take her a while to swim over. So today, it's, where are we? What's the date today?
Today is the 23rd.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're past Easter. Hopefully everybody had a great time.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on where you live in the world. Most of it's on fire, seems like. I want to do something today about healing. I don't know why, except that everybody seems to be struggling with something.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, Taylor had something going on. I don't know what it was. And I've always got something healing up. But, and it's because this is the Love Foundry, and because everything is in relationship to the power and energy of love as it comes into the human sphere, then we're going to look at that. We're going to look at healing in relationship to that energy. And I wanted to start it off by saying the body heals itself tremendously. It has sorry, I got distracted by a hummingbird out there. Zipping around. We've got a window behind us, which we're not going to show you because we'd have to turn the whole damn thing around. So the body heals itself up really well. And that is an aspect of love. We don't see it or think of it that way, but that's because the instinctual nature of the human animal, the human being in which we live, has love built into it to do the purposes that the animal nature needs love for, which is procreation and healing and a variety of other things. But the human being, which lives in the animal, has an entirely different and distinct relationship to the world of love, the energy of love. And so let me think about it for a second because I'm not absolutely sure. I would say, most, and that's over 50%. So let's put it there for now. And if I think about it a little more while we're talking, I'll change my view maybe. But most of the disease experienced by the human animal, the one that we're living in, is caused by the human being in it, us. We're doing that. And I think we're primarily doing it based on, well, there's a number of reasons. One, and primarily, is the emotional body. It's our emotional body that is pouring constant energy into our physical form based on how we feel about life. Now, if our emotional body is charged with love, instead of individual emotions like anger and frustration and rejection and over acceptance, various things that our emotional body can do towards things in the world. And remember, the emotional body and its appetites are controlling many of our physical appetites, deciding how much kimchi we should eat and other things. So we're imposing by not our excesses, although excesses add up, but by our choices, just the choices we're making. And the main choice that 90% of the human race, 90% plus, is making is not to continuously choose the energy of love as a conscious act. Because the difference between you and your animal nature is the animal nature is living out of the instinct, which is the programming that tells it how to respond in the world. We are a self-conscious, aware, partially aware human being. So we have an extra burden of being conscious of what we're choosing. Now, we're not exercising a lot of that. We're just letting the choices just animate. I like this, so I'm going to go get some. Let's go have Thai food tonight. That's a completely desire-based appetite in us, and it has not little thought in it. So we're imposing on top of the human nature our appetites. And the human nature is imposing on top of the animal nature its choices. And the animal nature is just basically responding so closely and intimately with us that it doesn't really argue. You want Thai food? The animal nature is not going to say, no, I don't want Thai food. I want bananas. It's just says, okay, Thai food it is. So, so healing is a realignment, basically, of what you've been doing with what rebalances the excesses in the body of what you've been doing to it. And we obviously know that if we just ingest too many calories, we get too much weight. And that's because the animal, by its nature, didn't really eat that much. If you were a grazing animal like a cow or a sheep, which the human animal is not, then you would be constantly grazing if food was available. But the human being is a sort of a multitask eater. It can eat a variety of things, and it's got the teeth for that. Fruit, nuts, vegetables, which is obviously what it's primarily evolved to eat. But we can also tear the flesh off a well-cooked chicken leg. So we're ingesting a lot of different things. And we know that it's pretty easy to recalibrate that. If you just stop having a banana split on your way home from work every day, or stopping in and tossing down 2 or 3 shots of wine or beer, your body will realign to the weight that it probably should be. Because in its natural habitat, it might have gone 2 or 3 days without a decent meal, depending on where you were herding or where you were living or where it was. We can imagine if we didn't feed our dog every day in its bowl, how often would it get a decent meal if it were out in the wild? And now domestic dogs, they've forgotten how, but even a wolf or something living out there only gets a kill every once in a while, and it doesn't stay around the dead animal for days, refrigerating it or anything like that. So it's kind of feast or famine in the animal kingdom, which is good. And if a human being does that, like they recommend a day a week of fasting or something like that. Yeah. So that one's kind of obvious. Weight control and how we balance our meals. That's something fairly mechanical and physical. Now, when we look deeper, what are these other diseases that the human experiences? And there's an endless amount of them, seemingly endless. And how do we bring about the healing or restoration of that? Because it's not really appetite controlled in terms of food, but it is appetite controlled often in terms of emotion.
Yeah.
Now, do you see a correlation there?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good, because I think that that's true. And so we're going to look at some of those, and we're going to look not at how you wean off of anger, for example. Here's anger. Anger is a great way to destabilize your liver. The liver tends to store anger. And there's lots of, in most traditional medicines, before we got to allopathic medicine in the West, where the pharmaceutical world took over, there were a lot of correlations in Chinese medicine and other European natural healing systems where these things were correlated and recognized. Not easily above the diaphragm. The diaphragm is kind of a divider between your lower nature and your higher nature. So trying to determine how you get a brain tumor or how you get certain lung diseases or diseases of the higher part of the body is a little more obscure. It's not as easy to see, but if you pay attention to the correspondences, it's easy to recognize the relationship. And they tend to be above the diaphragm, tend to be diseases of what we would call more advanced functioning. the simple person, the peasant person, who doesn't really think much, but lives mostly in their feeling nature and physical nature, just do their job, and they have some very, functionally speaking, rudimentary feelings, not a lot of sophisticated energies. Even a negative energy like jealousy, it can take hold of someone and really ravage the body over time. But what we would think of as common working peasant type people, which are just relatively simple in the world, which does not mean at all that they're not intelligent and functional. It's just they're not overcomplicating things. They don't function from the diseases or get the diseases as much that are like that. But there are some diseases that ravage humanity everywhere, like cancer. And these can be seen, if we look close at them, of diseases of what I call diseases of the personality that is not inclusive of the energy of love. When you look at your personality, how often through the day is it consciously inclusive of the energy of love, would you think, in your case?
I would hope at best 5 to 10%.
Yeah, most of the time you're taking care of whatever your job is. You're working. I think that goes up when you're out of your job.
Yeah, it does.
Because you're thinking more about what you would like in your life. But when we've got a task, and I've done a lot of different jobs, when you have a task that really is overcomplicated, it occupies so much of your consciousness, so much of your personality to just do the job, that you don't get a chance to think about, oh, I'm doing my job and I'm embracing the energy of love while I'm doing it, to the effect and impact of those around me. It doesn't take thought to do that. It doesn't take thought to include love. It takes intention.
Yeah.
And the intention to include it automatically summons it. It's like a little magnetism, a little voice that says, hey, I'm interested. I'm intentionally want to include love, the energy, the specific energy of it, not feelings, not nice feelings, because love is not a feeling. It can enter the feeling body and charge it with love, but it isn't a feeling. If you take love out and then charge the feeling body with forces, love is an energy. And when it enters as an energy. And that means it's non-divisive. It can't be divided into some lesser energy than itself. It can have different impacts, but it's still love having an impact on your liver or on your lungs or on your thyroid or on your brain. It's not exactly like this, but it's like 100% of love impacting that organ that you're interested in, but it impacts that organ the way that organ needs that impact, which would be different than another organ. And so that would appear to an observer that it's a different quality of love or different kind of love. But really, I think if we look close, you might see that it's a different kind of response to love based on the qualification of that particular organ or that particular person. If one person is having a different response to love than another, that's not a different kind of love. It's a different kind of response to the same thing. So we've set up a little sort of framework, and I don't know if this, let me know, but if you, oh, look, there's Taylor. Welcome to.
Sorry, I wasn't going to join. I was just going to listen in, but I'm happy to join
that's
too.
Sneaky of you.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt. You guys were already on a roll.
Yeah, I know, but we welcome the interruption.
Thanks.
yeah, it's completely different from either one of us, which is what makes the interruption more interesting. So we're talking about healing. And how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
That's good.
Yeah. You look good.
We're all right so far.
Good.
So we're talking about, we're setting up the framework of the distinction between how we create disease in our body rather than just catch one, or just be the victim of foul play of the gods, or something that says, oh my God, I've got a kidney problem. I've got a lung problem. I've got a cancer problem. You know, like we caught it, like we caught cancer from somewhere. When if we're going to take some responsibility for our life, which is what we must do if we're ever going to have 100% control of it.
Yeah, two things came to mind when you said that. I was like, well, first, you got to get out of, I'm a victim to it, right?
Yeah.
And then this other thing is I've noticed a lot is this intense polarization, right? Where it's like, it's health or disease, right? And it's like, you look at the two extremes of that. It's like you look at these, optimal healthy people or these really sick people, right? And where's this balance point? It's like, I don't think I'm phrasing this right, because it's not opposites, but it's this polarization where things get really crystallized, right? It's like you crystallize these things into your body and then you reinforce it with this victimhood mentality. So those are the things that came to mind as you were telling me what you guys are talking about. So I don't know if those two things come into play with the whole.
Well, you're talking about two different things at the same time, which is why it's not clarified in your mind. One of them is duality. And duality isn't a separation of reality. It's just two aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality in which love is a completely dominant and fully synthesized energy to those consciousnesses that live in it is one part of duality. The other part of duality, which is the consciousness of human beings living in the material world, the human world, without that consciousness of love, means that their consciousness is absent that. You're not holding it there,
mm-hmm.
but you're still part of the same world. In other words, love isn't like over there,
mm-hmm.
outside in the trees. It's everywhere. It's inside, outside, in the wood, in the metal, in the air, in everything. And if you're conscious of it, then that duality between that which is conscious of love and that which is unconscious of love shows up. And human beings that are unconscious of love are probably, not necessarily, but probably much more in danger of creating disease in themselves, because they're imposing something other than love in the place of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're feeling towards something, that's not love. That's feeling. That's force. I'm feeling positive towards you. I'm feeling negative towards Seb because he's said or done something just plain screwed up. But neither one of those are love. They're
mm-hmm.
both feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may or may not be creating dis-ease in me, depending on how angry I am at Seb or how over concerned emotionally I am with you. But neither one of them are love, so they're not going to maintain that dynamic, vital, positive vibration that love ultimately gives us. So if I want to have that experience in either case, I have to consciously choose it. And I have to unchoose what else I'm doing. Particularly if I'm having anger towards or rejection towards or resentment towards somebody else. Somebody like Trump or somebody like Biden or somebody like the Pope or whatever it is that I'm deciding I'm for or against, then some part of that human wholeness relates to some part of my own anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know which part.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the subconscious relationship that happens, which is why astrology has relationship to different parts of the body. Certain astrology relates to the legs or to the bowels or to the heart or the lungs or whatever part of the anatomy it is. Now, how did that come about? That wasn't some superstition. It was a conscious relationship to how Taurus affects the body by its nature. Some part of the body more than some other part of the body. Because in the 12 zodiacal signs, the complete wholeness of a human being is embodied in them, not any one of them, in all 12 of them. So there are relationships, and they subconsciously come into leverage with us when we act. So if you act towards something positively, then that part's going to stimulate positively some part of your anatomy. I really like that person, and that person's going to be some kind of a sun sign or another. So you're going to be stimulating that Virgo or that Taurus or that Leo energy in yourself.
Right.
And that's going to impact the heart or the head or the brain or something in a stimulating way. Now, if you're against someone, you're going to be doing the same thing against some part of that anatomy that relates to that. Now, because we aren't conscious of automatically of that, because we're not studied in those particular disciplines, then it's not going to be clear to us unless we prolong over a period of time, and then we begin to discover that we have a problem going on in one portion of our anatomy, and we can stop and actually reflect on what we're doing with our life. What are we thinking and feeling towards the life around us? And we might discover that there is a relationship to all that, which is why different healing systems come into play. There are people who look at people's astrology, which sounds silly to a medical doctor because he's never been trained in astrology. He's been trained in medicine. But to an astrologer, the whole map of the body is in the stars, which it is. If you learn how it relates.
Right.
So when we're talking about healing, we're talking about what are you or Seb or am I doing to produce dis-ease in us, and how do we not only relieve that, but produce dynamic health in its place. Now, I think you can go a long ways to relieving a dis-ease condition by changing how you relate to things, by seeing that if you're taking sides in a political issue, you don't like Trump and you like Biden, then you got to stop and realize that what you like and don't like has nothing to do with the issue, really. It's a question of what you think. If it's a country, what do you think the country needs in terms of an attitude and energy, and would be better than what this person's thinking and feeling? See, now you're getting some distance between you and judgment of a person.
Would you say from the emotional aspect, when you naturally gravitate towards or against Trump or Biden or, whatever it is, would you push emotion out of that so that that's not something that's feeding the energy in yourself towards or against it? Or, it's like we have these attitudes, and I think a lot of it's emotional attitudes towards things.
Well, if you watch your life, you'll realize that I've got a lot more behind me than in front of me. And so I've got enough to look at and see where I've switched, how I feel about things. And it was based on different changes in my consciousness for and against things that I thought were needed or not needed. Because all the opposites that create all of these dynamics of being for and against, they are opposites of one unity. So the moment you are for one and against the other of an opposite, you're creating disease in your nature. Now, the only way to stop that is to embrace the unity of the opposites and realize that in this particular side of this set of opposites, I need less of this and more of that. So that has nothing to do with an ego that happens to be out of balance itself with that. If someone's out of balance and we call them a conservative, that means they've got too much of one kind of energy. But that kind of energy is as absolutely vital to the world as is any other energy. So we have to recognize, okay, I need less of that in my life. And if the other side is pushing an energy imperfectly, then I have to say, well, I like that energy over there, but I want it adjusted better in itself. And so I need to put people in that part of my life that do that. Instead of being simplistic and just rejecting the people you don't like,
Right.
and including the people who speak things the way you speak them, you think, okay, I need to adjust my politicians so that they have a more balanced view of how these two things need to be included in our world. So you see, you're breaking down your prejudice and your biases to be more whole and inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just making that point to show that these divisive energies that rage around in our emotional body are impacting our organs. They're impacting the wholeness of our body, because your body isn't Republican or Democrat. It's not conservative or liberal. It simply is an animal living, but it's a whole animal living. So if you take sides in yourself emotionally, for and against, then you're attacking one part of your anatomy while you're extolling the other. And both of them can create different kinds of diseases.
Right.
Overemphasizing something imperfectly is going to create a problem in that way. Dismissing something is going to create a different one. So I'm just showing how the outside environment, visible and invisible, is all impacted by what we choose to think and what we choose to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that our body cannot be set aside from that. Now, there's a lot of people that just rage with anger all the time towards every damn thing you can think of. And you think, how do they live? How can they be so healthy? Because they're vital. They're vital people, because they're using their will. They're accentuating will, and they're being for and against, but inevitably and implacably, their body is suffering the consequences of it. It's hardening towards the thing they're rejecting.
Mm-hmm.
And so sooner or later, it will catch up, and their lives will begin to demonstrate the inverse reactions to too much of anything. People like that tend to drink too much. People like that tend to expound too much and throw a lot of energy around, and their body gets brittle and it gets crystallized. And so their organs, liver and other organs, are beginning to follow suit. You can say, oh, he's getting cirrhosis of the liver from drinking too much, but he's drinking too much because he's throwing all of this anger around and charging himself up with this false energy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a strong interrelationship between what they're eating, what they're consuming, and what they're giving out. And all of it comes back down to include how you relate. Now, it's
funny
completely different.
It's the inverse of what you think. It's like,
yeah,
what am I putting in? It's like, what am I putting out?
That's causing me to experience.
Uh-huh.
And the whole concept of victimhood, which you were talking about earlier, maybe before you popped up, but the victimhood that we give ourselves is a separation from our responsibility for what we're living in life. Instead of taking full responsibility for all the mishmash going on in your life, for or against, we choose praise and blame. You praise that person or that thing because it's giving you a reward you want, and that lets you feel rewarded, rather than acknowledging that you're rewarding yourself by including that in your life. Your choice was to include it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're blaming them, thereby blaming yourself for including something that's not helpful to you, something that's causing you stress and causing you anger and causing you frustration, and you can make yourself a victim of that. But what you're a victim of is your acceptance of it in your space by you. Not, we all have a choice. It doesn't look like we have a choice because we're sometimes slowly co-opted out of free choice. And no one's asking you, is this your free choice? No, I don't like it at all. That's true in a lot of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to give that to yourself and say to the world around you, I don't want any more of that. I've had enough of that. But if we make ourselves a victim, we give the power to something else.
Right.
And if you sit in a hospital waiting room talking to people, all you will hear about is their victimhood.
It's true.
They're all exchanging with each other what they're a victim of. One of them's there for this and one of them's there for that. And you'll get the whole story. but rarely do you get the sense of responsibility that anyone's taking for what they've got. But if you don't take that responsibility, how are you going to be at cause to it? How are you going to have cause over a disease in your body if you don't take responsibility? And here's the point about healing with love. There's a direct correspondence between taking cause over something and love, because the cause of all things is love. There is no other cause. That is the causative energy of life. Life has lots of energies, but the creative energy is love. So when we're not taking responsibility for causing the difficulties in our life, then we're placing ourselves at effect to something that we ourselves set into motion somehow and are not acknowledging and taking control over it. So the point of realizing that no matter what's going on in your body, what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your emotions, you are the ultimate arbitrator of it. Not God, not the devil, you. You're choosing with every breath, with every word, with every thought, with every feeling, you're choosing to create. And because the human race has been unconscious of love as a power to put into your speech, into your feeling body, and into your mind, we're not using it. We're just living on the vital health of the human body itself to fight against things that attack it in the wilderness. But when it's being attacked from within itself by us, it has no real way to defend itself.
Right. So if you come at it with that 100% responsibility, so you're at cause, does that automatically align you with love? Or
No.
is the conscious, you have to be conscious of it to complete
I would say it automatically starts your alignment, because taking responsibility is half of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And once you take half of the battle, the other half of the battle starts to lay itself out. It's like, and if you just ask yourself why it's not working, if you've got a problem and it's not yielding to your taking responsibility for it,
mm-hmm.
then you look at it and go, what am I not doing here?
Right.
What am I missing?
You take more responsibility.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I'm still angry at that bastard that I'm living with, then I may still be having that upset in my body. And if you stop and see that, so you go, well, maybe I should stop being angry at this idiot and get rid of them, or tell them and change the dynamic. If I change the dynamic because I'm causing it, then I'm starting to exercise power, taking me in the direction of love. But see, all of those are
put it out in front of you, right?
You're putting
so you can actually look at it.
All of these are things that allow your free will, your will, to make optional changes. But your free will is not love. It's your free will. It's a different thing. It's a different category of life. But if you take that free will and now put it into alignment with love, decide to form a relationship with it, decide to incorporate it into your free will, now you have set up an entirely new dynamic in yourself. And, you know, if a guy drinks too much and argues too much and fights too much with the world around him to develop his own strength, and then thereby creates disease in his body, that's one thing. But a lot of other people, and I think this is true a lot of women experience certain diseases in their body as a result of things that they have no defense against, because it starts when they're very young. It starts with people, I don't don't pay a lot of attention to the culture in which I live. So I guess if you're, what would you call it when you're forcing your thought on a person about what you want them to be or think about them, or you're contextualizing them or posturing them, or those aren't the right words. There's
like imposing.
Yeah, they have a modern term for it when people are, right now they got this big
tyrant.
Thing going on.
You're a tyrant?
No, that's that's a tyrannical act. It's an impersonal act, and it's an act of separation because you haven't taken their freedom. It's a violation of freedom to impose your thoughts and feelings on another person. But when you see a good-looking guy at the other end of the bar, as a girl or a guy, if that's what blows your horn, but not to make a pun, but if you're looking at someone on the other end of the bar and you decide, oh, that's kind of good looking, then it's the same thing, but it's acceptable in the context of the culture in which you live. Other cultures wouldn't dream of doing that. They would go somewhere else with their thought and somewhere else with their feeling. But in an American culture, or maybe an English culture, I don't know what you guys do over there, but I'm sure it's something pretty twisted. So it's kind of a soft, tyrannical thing, because you haven't said, do you mind if I have all of these objectified feelings about you? You haven't said that to the person, but you're doing it. And so by doing it, you're imposing in their space. And you're imposing in their space because you have desires of your own. You have your own desires for those kinds of activities. And you think because they're in your head or in your feelings, they're separate from that person. It's not reaching from your end of the bar to theirs. And in a bar where you got a house full of people having a lot of conversation and thoughts and feelings about each other, all the time they're in there having these conversations about the new thing that's in someone's life, they're having their own thoughts and feelings objectifying that person. So we just do it like a swimming pool we're all peeing in. So what's happening is it's just going on in the room. And that's not quite the same as someone who's just deliberately imposing their will over everybody else's freedom. That's going on as well in life, tyrannically, by bosses doing it to employees, and all governments doing it to people, and all of that. And we're just not, at this stage of human behavior, we're not just distinguishing all of that. We're not seeing that that's rude to do. But we're looking at this from love's point of view and from healing. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, what happens to a person who's victimized by that? As children, and this is particularly true of girls, it's identical, relatively close, if they're subject to a parent or a near person in their life who's deliberately objectifying them sexually, for example. If you're being objectified sexually by someone living in your house with you, then it's very personal. But in our cultures, it's being done to girls much more than it's being done to boys, because it's a masculine thing to do that. Girls have thoughts and feelings about things, but they associate them more in a romanticized way rather than a physical way. So if that's happening to you, what are you doing about it as a young girl? As a young girl, you're aware of it. You're not aware of it at a certain young age, but at a certain point in where you begin to realize this person's having objectified sexual thoughts about you. And when you notice that, I don't know what age you noticed it, but it's the same age and when all the guys notice that they want to do that. So it happens somewhere along the line there. And now suddenly you're having to deal with it. And how you deal with it is any one of a number of ways. Some people just meet it and flirt with it or push it back a little or not particularly bothered by it because they feel safe and protected. Other people who don't feel safe and protected feel vulnerable because their parents are AWOL or not taking care of watching what's going on in their environment, or not aware that maybe someone living in the household is having these kind of thoughts and feelings towards you. There's a lot of time, and then you don't know what to do about it because you don't want to bring it up over dinner. So what we do is we internalize it. We start trying to reduce our exposure in the situation to look less attractive, to look less for a girl, to look less sexual, to look less. So your own sexuality and natural sexuality instead of being just who you are and balanced with your emotion of the moment,
Mm-hmm.
develops a life of its own and starts internalizing itself and not wanting to be seen and not wanting to be recognized. And then we start to act it out. We start to act that way, start to be deflective, start looking away, start hiding ourselves from vision, other people's vision. So you can see how that kind of activity happens naturally, not because something
It's
you're
true.
doing.
Yeah, I experienced it.
Yeah,
But-
every single girl or woman does experience it thousands of times.
And then we go through like this tomboy phase where
Yeah.
it's like you just don't want to embrace your femininity almost. It's like you just want to blend in, you know, you don't
Right.
want to
Just be a person in the room.
exactly.
But you can't when other people are not going to permit it, because they're not taking any signals from you. They're just so charged up with their own testosterone in the masculine world that it's just overloading what would be any little common sense they might have been blessed with in their life or taught. Now, parents who are aware of these kind of things, they do these disciplines on their children to try to get them to not do it. And to some degree, they're effective, and some degree, they're not. But within that wide range of impulses that are coming at you, you have to deal with them. Or go hide where there's no people. And if once it takes root in you, even hiding with no people won't protect you from the thoughts yourselves, because you start giving power to them over you. So this is not a situation where you think you're creating your own disease, but yet how you're responding to something is internalizing itself and beginning to build up an imbalance in the nature. And then later, in the case of this particular type of abuse, which goes on everywhere, we get certain types of diseases that appear in women, internal diseases. And because it's sexually engaged, it's around those organs often, or some other organ, depending on how they're responding to it. If they're responding to it with a lot of anger, then they become angry at men, or angry at all men, or some men, or masculinity itself, and that internalizes itself towards organs like the liver and other parts of the intestines. And we can start developing certain kinds of things. And this is just one small example of how a seemingly automatic expression towards something in the world that's going on around you in the pool can cause you to create illness in you. Now, most guys, if you're putting it in the terms of their sexualization story, they aren't thinking about harming anybody with their fantasies. They're just having them. And the fact that it might be unwelcome by somebody else, even to be touched with the feeling or with the thought, because they're so insensitive to feeling or thought, either one, they're just responding to a physical sensation.
Right, doesn't occur.
No, it doesn't occur to them that it's having any impact whatsoever, or they want it to have an impact because they're flirting and they want some reaction. They want a positive reaction. And if they get a negative reaction, it's like, no is just an answer before yes, in whatever culture they're raised in. And so the point I'm making is the disease becomes real as far as being called a disease. See, there is no reality to any disease. It's just a created condition of accumulated response to something.
So that's a tough one to take 100% responsibility for, though.
It is.
I mean, where's your position to stand?
But if you don't, how will you ever gain power over it?
Right. I see that. But it still is, where do you stand in that? Do you take 100% responsibility for that? So you say, I'm in control of how I respond to this, right?
Right. And the hardest part of that is, how do you respond to it with love?
Right.
You see, the cure is in the response. The response of love to any external stimuli is healing to you. But until you understand how it's healing to that other thing, to the person whose stimuli you're responding to, if you're responding to someone's stimuli that's you're offended by, how do you love it? How do you direct the energy of love towards it? Well, this is all part of where the human race is struggling right now. It's struggling to understand. I don't mind getting that attention from somebody of my own race, but I don't want that attention from somebody of another race. I don't mind getting it from the Catholics, but I don't want it from the Mormons.
Right.
You see, we're making all these distinctions, and I don't mind it from that young guy over there with the football haircut, but I don't want it from that long-haired dude over there that's smoking a joint. I don't want that. Or the other way around, depending on how your appetites are developed. So it takes a growing up of your consciousness into a more mature ability to respond to the world around you, to be at cause to a bunch of children who aren't in control of their thoughts and their feelings.
I was just thinking that. I was like, I love Paramahansa's take on it. You know, I treat them all like they're loved little children. Like
they're loved children. That's a hard thing to do, but it's spoken from a place in consciousness that sees them all that way.
Right.
Which doesn't mean that he doesn't have his own challenges with all of it. But they're going to be more...
But you can even have that attitude towards yourself too. You know, that's that part of me that is a loved child that needs to be grown and matured, and you know, you put it out in front of you still so you can actually look at it. And
yes, you have to be willing to see yourself as you really are, in spite of the warts and all of the indignities and the trashy thoughts and the crazy feelings. And once you witness that, you realize behind all of that is something better, something you're going to grow into, something you're going to inhabit. And when we think about, well, this is about healing. So we can see how many different diseases are there that have been named by the medical profession or other people?
Maybe it's just one disease.
Yes, in the end, it kind of is. But all of those names for all the different conditions that cause debilitation in the human being are all caused by one simple thing, a lack of relationship to love in the one having the problem. No matter what, no matter what it is. And that relates to the esoteric first law of healing in esotericism, which is the answer to the whole issue of what am I going to do about disease because you're going to have disease, no question about it. We're going to encounter coming and going of diseases through the whole story of our life, and some of them stick around because the habits that are creating them stick around, and some of them come and go because they're just streams that came into our energetic wholeness, and then they hung out for a while and caused havoc a bit, and then they disappeared out because another stream came in, or you got control of it. So we have to focus on the relationship between love and its instrument in relationship to you, which is your own soul nature. That's your source of love.
That's that rule you were talking about. The soul does the healing.
Yes. Well, the soul is the healer, but its healing power is love. It has no other power. That is its power. In the island of environment in which the soul lives, love is the power that animates it. Everything there by its nature has already surrendered to that being a reality. In the material world,
health is automatic in that
yes,
place. Perfect
health is an automatic expression of that which lives. It doesn't mean it doesn't suffer. Suffering is another thing. Suffering is a condition of association to something that's not perfect or whole or healthy. And so we can suffer, but that doesn't make us sick. That doesn't make us diseased. So, and of course, there's exceptions to everything because this is a completely immersed universe in which everything is sharing the same bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
But when you realize the bathwater we're all sharing is love, it has a very different impact on your life than when you realize it only comes and goes occasionally, or it's something that happens only at certain ages or times or in your emotional body or something like that. Because now you're missing most of the reality. But that's a matter of choice. You can change your relationship to that and change your health
Mm-hmm.
dynamically with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we do that? How do we think we're doing that and not doing it? You were talking about your mother who has a condition that's really difficult.
Yeah.
And so how do we change that? Well, number one, we can't. It's your body. You're 100% responsible. So you're going to have to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can encourage other people to use their free will to change the condition they're suffering from, but we can't do it for them. We can create an environment around them in which it's easier for them to do it by our own relationship to love. People who really love you, I mean, actually just fucking love you, create an environment around you by the nature of just the ions of love filling your environment. You may not pay any attention to it. You may not even know who's doing it, but it'll be there.
Right.
And by its being there, certain things will be easier for you. But in the end, you're still going to ignore it, or you're going to choose the energy of love. So that's something that we need to look at. You have to find that relationship to love itself and make it live in you, actually live in you, which is different from having thoughts and feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can love the idea of God, or you can love the idea of the Christ or the Buddha or something that you think possesses an infinite amount of love in itself. And but
Right,
that doesn't replace it in you.
It's that relationship thing. Yeah. It's like,
yeah, I can hang a picture of the Buddha.
Then you're relating it to it. You know, you're not thinking about it. You're not projecting at it. You're not asking of it. You know, you're relating with it to its direct experience. And that's what makes the difference.
That, or you're doing the opposite. I can put the Buddha on one wall, and I can put the Christ on another, and I can put Mary on the third wall, and all on the fourth. I can line my room with all these faces,
right?
Different gurus, different people who I think have an abundance of this power to heal and love and include me and make a world a golden bowl. But that's just me looking at them having those powers, and maybe they have those powers and maybe they don't. But either way, I can believe they do, but I'm asking them for it. Mm-hmm. I'm not finding it in me.
Right.
Like, and you just espouse the opposite. If I look at the picture of the Buddha and then I look to find the Buddha in me, you see, that takes down the barrier between us. Mm-hmm. Where is it inside of me? Where is that energy coming up out of me? Because if that's the thing I trust, if I trust the Buddha to have more healing power in him than any of the other pictures on my wall, then that's the one I'm attracted to. But if I see it as something in him, mm-hmm. and I ask him to give it to me, or ask him to bless me, or ask him to fix me, then I'm still holding myself
separate.
Yeah, separate from it.
Right.
And that's no different than being separate from that guy down at the end of the bar who's objectifying you.
Right.
So, and so it puts us in the place of realizing that barrier that you put up to being objectified is very strong, because you've had to do it.
Right.
A lot, especially if you're a woman. And guys too, you know, depending on where you live and what environment you're in, it's just everywhere. And now, how do you sense it? How do you break it down so that that barrier that you have put up, the glass wall between you and love itself, not between you and the Buddha, or you and the Christ, or you and Mary Magdalene, or whoever you attract to yourself to as a feminine embodiment of love or healing, the actual energy that you think they possess. See, that's in them. Now it's two places removed. Not only do you see that Buddha there, somebody's depicted it by carving a statue that nobody ever met of him. So now you're looking at that persona, but you're actually after the healing power of love inside the persona. So you see, we set all these difficulties up. Mm-hmm. And if you're suffering from a disease that's growing in you, you got people in your world over there creeping in on you. Is that Azzy?
That's Phoenix.
Phoenix.
He's got a haircut, so it makes him look young again.
No, it was shorter. I thought you're up sitting high.
Yeah.
All right.
Boys.
Well, you see how vulnerable, when you look at someone like Phoenix, you see just how vulnerable we are when we're that age. How much trust we have in the world around us and how little we are prepared to deal with any of these energies and forces that bombard us. Good to see you, Phoenix.
Dan says it's good to see you.
Did you tell him Seb's here with me?
You see Uncle Sebby?
Hi, Phoenix.
He's like, my knees hurt.
Yeah.
I need some help. I need some love to heal me.
Yeah, well, that's where you get it. You get it from mom until you can provide it for yourself.
Exactly. Okay.
Now, what we mostly do as guys is we go find a substitute for mom that'll supply it for us.
Sorry for that interruption. Carry on.
So it's not an interruption. It's just part of what's going on.
It is.
It is. But what I said while you were busy interrupting was mostly we go get somebody else to supply it for us when our mom isn't around.
Yeah.
Because we just don't take that next step. And even the religions that purport to be bridges between humanity and what? Love itself. In the Christian perspective, what was the whole thing about? It was about love. That's all it was about, really. Not about anyone's personality and not deifying anybody. Just it's about your relationship to love. Mm-hmm. But does the church bridge that relationship for you?
No, it came out of he died for your sins. Someone else did it. Did it.
Yeah, right. It gets turned into another story.
Yeah.
And which still leaves that's okay. They did the best they had with what they got or whatever. But
stories are what make it accessible in some ways too, because it provides, like a framework for things.
Yes, but if you're not offering what it was built around, then where are you?
Right.
That's not true of everyone in it, but the overall structure has become very materialized like everything else. Mm-hmm. So we're still left. Who cares about that? But we still don't have that pathway open. It's not an open pathway. It's not flooding through it to humanity, which it should be. Yeah. And so they lost their pope at the Catholic. We're in between popes now. So they're going to figure out how to put another person in charge. But are they worrying about the flow of love to humanity? Or are they worrying about whether he's a conservative pope or a liberal pope?
That's what it seems like.
I know. And the concerns are way more complicated if you're inside the convocation than if you're out, because they're in there thinking, oh, well, the guy we had was a liberal. He was too liberal. He was blessing same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he was a Jesuit. So we like the liberalism, but we don't like the imprint of the Jesuits on the church because they have their own view of the Christ relationship to humanity as a sort of king of the world and devil in the world sort of argument of opposites. So it's not a simple thing, even for them, to try to pick who's going to lead this thing towards love, especially when we built a lot of arguments for and against the idea of just loving somebody. Yeah. Just because, and if you look, you'll see the same, they have the same problem in their body as you do, or I do, or Seb does, well, maybe not Seb, because he's so far perfect, closer to perfect than the rest of us, but they don't know how to trust the actual living energy of love to do the healing. So they don't know how to deliver it. You know, if your milkman keeps delivering you empty bottles, you're going to cancel your milk run. And so if you're going to be giving people love, sooner or later someone's going to want something in the bottle. Where is it? Where is the stuff itself? Well, if they don't think themselves capable of filling themselves with it and then delivering it, which is the job, if you're going to be a passageway for love to humanity, then you've got to take on that. That's what the Christ did. Jesus filled himself with it. He took it at the baptism, and then he demonstrated what it could do, and then said, you know, get some, love one another. Well, that's not a very good explanation of how you go about doing it. But the whole story, if you look at that Bible story, is just examples of how people in the face of choices did it. So it's there. It's an educational program in its way, but it's not very obvious and clear. But it's a difficult subject. So how is it going to come to you? And you certainly don't need a church of any kind, because it's already in you. That was already done. The taking in of that into the human race and placing it inside of everyone as an accessible thing happened. It happened. You know, nothing that we particularly did, but it happened. And so now that it's there, you might as well take advantage of it if you can. But if you use your intellect to think about it and you use your emotions to feel about it, then you're not going to go directly to it. You have to go past both of those. And if you've got an illness in your body, you need to go past both of the things that cause the illness, which is the emotion and the mental and the actions you've taken. Those three things have caused these illnesses. You've got to get past all three of those to love itself. And yet it's already there. It's in the air you breathe. It's in everything. It's in every cell of your body. So you have to get past it in consciousness. You have to make yourself aware of it in your senses. If it's not touching your senses in a way that makes you aware of it, how are you going to identify it? With what part of you is going to identify love if it isn't through your senses? How will you know it if you don't have a contact with it, and then respond to that contact with a realization that this feels different? This is a different kind of generation of relationship in me to something. So it's a challenge that we don't know how to meet because it's so unfamiliar. And so we fall back on worshiping the Buddha or the Christ or some other character that's going to bring it to us.
Or the doctor.
Or the doctor. Yeah, we can worship the doctor thinking he's going to heal us. And there are people who have healing energy in their hands. And that's like people who have healing energy in their emotional body and love people because they put love in their emotional body instead of feelings. They're different.
It's true. You know when you come across them too.
Yes, you feel that you feel the impact. And you know that they're actually forwarding your interests in the direction of your need, your ultimate well-being, rather than theirs or someone else's.
Right.
And the human race is at the beginning of this process of recognizing and applying love to themselves, to ourselves, from within ourselves, which is handy. If it's right in there, that makes it easier. You don't have to climb a mountain to get it. You just have to get over the mountain of your own separation from it, which you have built in, separating yourself from other parts of life that you don't want interfering with you. And the only reason they did interfere with you is because you didn't know how to meet them with love, which is a protection and a transforming power against things that touch you. Love has incredible capacities and characteristics and can do things that you never imagined. So that's why you can use it in the difficulty of whatever is coming at you. Giving it fake love, the emotional idea of being friendly and positive towards something that's trying to eat you alive or attack you, does not protect you. But if you think that that's love and you give it to it and you get hurt, then you think, oh, love doesn't work. No, it's us that doesn't work. We never applied love to anything because we didn't build a relationship to it in our consciousness that allows us to put it out. So these are difficulties, but they're difficulties that can be overcome, particularly right now. That's the difficulty we're all up against in humanity right now. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, the visual that keeps coming to me is a zero. You can't divide a zero, right? You come back to that 0 point. It kind of reminds me of, the zero limits. It's all like
that's
center.
True. The zero is a great place.
Just a visual to, so you're not too far this way, that way. It's, it's something that you can kind of put in a visual context to what's happening in this conversation.
Well, all the numbers come out of the zero. That's the only place they can come from.
Backwards
because
and
the
forwards.
Zero is a circle, and it holds everything in it. Everything's in it.
And it can't be divided. You can't divide a zero.
No,
it's whole
it can't
in
be
its
broken
essence.
down, and it doesn't take up any room between all the other numbers.
It's that starting place.
It's an amazing place. And if you place love in it, then everything comes after it carries love in it. But if you leave love out of it, then everything that comes after it just has whatever that number is. Mm-hmm. See, the number one can have all the love there is, and now you're just looking at one aspect of it.
Right.
Which is all right. Because
that's why it can be endless. You have this endless.
You're recognizing the wholeness that is with it. You're just looking at this part of it. Mm-hmm. And the two is just another aspect of the wholeness. But if you started with the love, then that's where you end up. Right. You end up with the love, but you end up with the full understanding of all the other aspects of it when you get to the end.
It's like the alpha and the omega.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. So I didn't mean to open up a box.
You did. And you
it
did
just really, it was just there the whole time to be opened.
So now we're in the subject of numerology, and we can go on with that.
No, I just meant as like you can look at it in all these different ways, but you're right. It's like everything's contained within it, and you can pull out as many aspects as you want forever.
Right.
But it's all right there.
Unless you think it's not contained within it, in which case for you, it's not. For you, the zero means nothing. For some people, the zero means everything.
Right.
And that's part of the.
I mean, not to get philosophical on it, but it's kind of the same thing. No thing and everything. It's kind of two sides of the same coin.
It is. And once we thought that way, remember when the Greeks had an alphabet?
Right.
And the alphabet in the Greeks, alpha, beta, and on down the alphabet, they were words instead of numbers. Mm-hmm. And they were words that had meaning. And they were all words describing what's going on within this wholeness. Alpha is the person. Alpha is everything. Alpha is the life. And beta is the home that the life lives in. Mm. And on you go through the explanation of how all of this is working together. But alpha is not left out when you go to beta.
Right. It's all built in.
But if you just reduce it to a digit, they become separate, and they're a street address. They're not really full. They're not a full registration of what we mean, how we mean everything is within the fullness of the wholeness. And the wholeness only exists when love exists. When love exists for us, wholeness exists, because love is unity.
Health. And health exists, right?
Love refuses to separate it. Yes, total health exists. Mm-hmm. And love refuses to separate itself from anything. Mm-hmm. So when you start with zero, you're starting with the fullness of love itself. Mm-hmm. And if you start with alpha, you're starting with the beginning of everything, and it's included in everything. And then there's that which it lives in, and then there's that which we do with that when we live in it. And so you see, it's a building conversation rather than just numbers.
Mm.
But at this point, we have to find the way in which we can see that that problem in our body can be expelled and returned to health and wholeness by the nature of that which has the power to do it. Now, we know what love can do. We saw miracles performed with it. And miracles are performed every day with love that we don't put in the Bible, like turning water into wine or healing all these people. Now, how do you heal people with leprosy? It was considered a pretty serious complication in your life when you had it. But there were people that were being, and it wasn't just Jesus healing people with leprosy. St. Francis of Assisi was well known for going around doing that with people because he wasn't afraid of the disease, because he had the healing power in him of love and knew it. So giving ourselves a connection to that healing power. Now, the Buddha has it, obviously. I don't know how many people he healed. He was really perfecting the mind of the world so that we could heal ourselves. But I presume people were helped, healed, strengthened in his environment. Now, the Christ made a point of it because he's dealing with that part of love, which is the healing side, not the wisdom side. So what are we going to do about it? When we separate ourselves from wanting some guy 2,000 years ago to have fixed things for us and want to take on fixing things for ourselves so that we can have the same power he had to do it, now we're going to take a step ahead. And then when we apply that to a disease that's in our own body, we're going to have to take responsibility for that disease. If it's being created by something other than ourselves, how are we going to gain power over it? But if I'm the one creating that problem in my kidneys or in my liver or in my muscles or nerves or brain or wherever the hell it is, then I know that I can stop whatever I'm doing to create it, and I can connect with love, which can have a healing power in it, and restore that part of my separation from the wholeness outside of the zero. If I don't like the number 7, if I don't like the number 8, if I don't like the number 4, then I'm going to have some problems somewhere in my body. No question about it. But if I restore it to 0 first, and then deal with everything else independent of that, but yet still including it in love, I'm going to do better. So focus on what's wrong with you, if there's anything in your case or Seb's case. Seb's near perfection makes this a difficult problem for us, but if you can find something wrong in you, then you can practice this art of this.
Yeah.
And if you do it successfully, you'll be grateful for the illness that you possess, because it will show you during the healing what you separated yourself from and are now back in union with.
I was thinking about that too. I was also thinking it's going to take a bit of courage. If you put that there, then you'll find the strength to do it. You know, if you realize.
Yes. If you have the courage. It's
going to take some courage, because then you have it. You put it there. Well,
courage comes from the meaning of the word courage, comes from the same meaning as the word heart. It comes from that. It's the core. It's the center part. It's the heart of us, which is where that love comes forth from. And then loving yourself means you have to let go of what it was that caused the disease in you. Mm-hmm. So that through loving yourself in that particular area of your anatomy, you love that which caused you to do it. Because you didn't treat it with love, you didn't treat yourself with love. Now, had you treated it with love in the beginning, that doesn't mean you yield to somebody's demand for anything or to being pushed around by them. It just means you give it that love and then go on with what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in some cases, because of the nature of the word karma in the human race, we don't have a clear understanding, because your mind, to defend your weaknesses, to defend your failed ability to protect yourself with love, will conjure up all these reasons why it's not true.
Yeah.
I was only 5 years old. There was nothing I could do. Well,
that's when you whisper, have some courage.
Yeah.
Have some fucking courage.
Well, you'd be amazed at what the power of a child is when they do have courage.
Oh,
And
I got a couple boys that are fearless.
yeah, that's true. And I've seen them coming back and forth to the hospital on occasion. We all get, boys get into this sort of application of courage to boundaries. And so the point I'm making here is that get past all this and get down to the truth of it, and want that truth to be true. Want it not to just be a vague idea in your mind or some story some religious character taught, but actually true in your life. And then ask yourself why it's not true already.
Right.
And you'll find that you're keeping it outside the room in which you live. You live in your consciousness. You live in the room you've built. And you built it over a long period of time without love as a companion in the room. It was always there in the room with you, but you weren't using it in relationship to you, except on occasion in some lifetime here or there. So
Can I
you
open a box right now? Or are there too many boxes open?
Well, this is a deep issue in the human race. Self-healing, which is what we're talking about, comes from recognizing love as an aspect of yourself. It is an aspect of yourself, which we have not been able to acknowledge fully. Now, why is a box that we were not going to open today, because why humanity?
I wasn't thinking that, but I was thinking of circling back to the astrology that we had already kind of opened. But I was thinking of Cancer's, kind of words that are associated with Cancer. And he says, "I built a lighted house, and in there dwell." Is that what you're talking about when you're saying, "I built this room and live in it"? Okay.
Not in relationship to the astrology sign Cancer.
Okay, sorry then. I thought it kind of segued into there.
Maybe you see it that way, but it's too big a concept to relate a constellational being
right
to the disease of Cancer. There's probably a relationship there.
No, I was referring more to, you create this house you're living in inside yourself, right? And
yes,
that's what I was referring to. And you put that light in there that, you realize that light that exists in you, that love that exists in you, and in there dwell. So I was trying to bring those two things together, but
you do open boxes that most of the ones that I open have a relationship to the basic thing we're discussing.
Yeah.
The ones you open just take you out into the infinite, but
sorry.
Which can have a very disturbing impact on people that are barely trying to understand what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, Seb keeps quiet.
Too quiet.
Well, we may be just conversationalizing in an area that he doesn't think what he contributes will add to it.
I would like to track back actually to the very beginning of when we started this. You said about how about 50% is stuff that people are sort of causing within themselves. So my assumption was that maybe 50% is maybe a karmic thing from a previous lifetime. Was that what you were alluding to?
Well, yes, because there's no other place for it to come from. 100% of everything you're experiencing is self-generated.
Yeah.
And because we got started, and I don't want to argue the issue of reincarnation, but you're not a beginner. Nobody's a beginner. We don't. I mean, nothing's an absolute that I say or anyone says, really. There's some animal somewhere, maybe Seb's dog looks pretty ready, that at its next involvement in life after this lifetime could very well be prepared to be a human being, a beginner. But the chances are it won't happen anytime soon. In other words, nature creates human souls to experience human life within a cycle of time on any planet that it's welcomed to when it chooses to. We don't decide that. You may be ready to be a human being at a certain stage, but you wait until the opportunity and the need and the cooperative group effort that produces human beings comes around. You don't just, I think I'll go in as a human being now. You don't any more than some 60s yuppie could say, you know, I'm not going to have any more incarnations. I've had enough. And hippies, they were hippies then. And so, and they're still hippies, and a lot of them still hold this idea that you have some sort of say in the matter. You don't have any say in the matter. We're the human nature of our whole nature, which involves a spirit nature, and it involves a soul nature, and it involves a human nature, 1/3 of you, if we're that much. So what are you going to tell the other two aspects of your nature? I'm in charge here. That's what egos do.
Right.
We don't know crap about those worlds or what they're doing in those worlds, what we're doing in those worlds. And nor do we know what we're doing in there as a group. The whole human race is one kingdom. And that isn't just a place where we all live. That's what we all are.
Mm-hmm.
If you add us all up, we are the human kingdom. If you add all the animals up, that is the animal kingdom. All those lives make up that kingdom. Not just the bodies, the life, the soul of that kingdom, the spirit of that kingdom, whatever that all is. So we have to realize that we are part of ourselves living in this location of consciousness and in physicality. You're living in the material world. It is matter. It's mostly mineral, but it also has, you know, water and gas, but that's mineral too. But you're also living in an emotional environment, and you're living in a mental environment. And those three added together have allowed you to develop an ego and a personality, and that ego and personality can act a certain way. And it can ignore love. And when it does, it suffers for it. So that's not complicated, is it? But yet, that's what's going on. And if we don't know that, if we don't recognize that, and we don't put effort forward to try to harmonize ourselves with that great energy of life, then we won't know what it's like to live with it. If you don't like living with love as a full expression in your nature, then you can divorce yourself from it.
It's a terrible thought.
Well, there are those who do.
I do have a question.
Evil.
So, you know, you're 100% responsible for creating everything in your life, including disease, all these things, right? You're willing to stand in that place where you're taking responsibility and you're choosing to be conscious of love. You're building that relationship. You're working at this thing. And let's say you have a child and you don't want that child to necessarily be objectified in the ways that we discussed earlier. So I'm just asking a question because it came up and I thought maybe other people would have a question about this. So let's say you're holding that, you're this child's parent or the person that's charged with being responsible for them, whether you're a parent or a grandma or anything. If you're holding that consciousness of love and that child together, does that put up protection to that little being in any way? You know, does it have that capability? I don't think that love has any limitations, by the way, as I ask this question.
Well, it does have limitations, but the limitations are what it sets upon itself. And violating...
Well, no, it doesn't violate free will. I get that. But when you're the one that's responsible for a child, it's not an act of violating their free will. It's your responsibility to protect them. You're charged with
Right.
that until they're capable of doing it for themselves.
Okay, but when you say to the kid at the park, stay here and watch your sister, I'll be back in a little while you head down to the liquor store to get yourself a short dog, you have opened up a can of worms. You've opened up possibilities. And if you say, well, I've got a good relationship to love, so take care of my kids till I get back. You see, there's a world of mischief in there. There's a world of mischief in thinking that you have any control over any of that.
Right. And I get all that too.
Well, but you no, I don't think you do. I think if you get love fully yourself, if you're fully open to it and it's flooding you and you're sensing its incredible depth and its livingness around you and its availability to impact everything you love through you, and you're acting on that, then the knowingness of when that protection is there and when it isn't there and what to do to keep it there, then that becomes a part of your knowing.
Got it. That's what I was kind of asking.
None of us have that fullness yet.
Right.
There are those who do have that fullness. They're not billions of them on the planet. There's a few. So they can do that. They can do a number of things because they can see into the matrix of it all. Now, your capacity of love overflows to your child because the child is entrusted to you by its birth. Nature has a protection of children related to the parent of the child before it takes on its own identity of maturity. And this is true in almost all creatures. When the parents kick the animal out of the nest or out of the group to go fend for themselves, then it becomes its responsibility. But in the herd animals, they go back to supporting the herd. They protect the herd, which is why elephants will stomp you to death if you try to attack one of their young, because they're protecting their tribe. Now, humans have a different relationship to all that because of our individuality, but we still have it, but we have it in a much greater way when we're invested in love. But until you are a human invested in love and it's invested in you in a conscious way, and you learn more about its ways, its grace, and its unity, and its transformative possibilities, and its transmutation, when that becomes part of the things that occupy your awareness, then your knowledge of how to include your children in it and other people's children, the world around you, expands. And it expands into a great creative force. So until then, we have to work on opening that relationship to love so that you can include it more. And how much you include is how much you do. I don't know. It's different for every person. And we can think we're taking care of business, but because of our lack of true understanding of the energy of love in our consciousness, we may not be taking care of business at all. It may just be good karma on their part that you left them at the park and they're there when you get back. So, that's the dangerous territory to make any judgments about yourself in, or anyone else, really. But everybody's got a trail behind them from all of the lives we've lived. And with it comes the judgments of the lords of karma, whose business it is to perfect love in the human race. And so when we demonstrate a lack of it by our actions, then they create something complementary to it as an experience to teach you the lesson you just demonstrated you don't have. And if you just hit somebody over the head with a hammer and took their watch when you were not quite as nice as you are now in a previous lifetime, that was observed by nature. And so that part of nature which sets up experiences to demonstrate that might be a violation of love, and there may be a lesson you need to learn, set aside a lesson for you. Now, how is that lesson going to play out in your life now? We don't know. We'll have to watch and see. But you've changed from that person. And maybe the changes you've made have changed that lesson. And maybe you have made it worse. Maybe you've hit a whole bunch of other people over the head with the same hammer. Or maybe you threw the hammer away and said, God damn, that was a mistake. I should not have done that. That still doesn't take you off the hook, but you're at least coming to a realization of something, and it's opening up your relationship to love. Look, I learned this in war. In war, people kill other people. It's just the job. But when people do, they have to face something. They have to face what that brings into the consciousness. You can think what it brings into your consciousness watching Call of Duty on your computer, but it's real. When another's life is extinguished at your hand, now you have to decide what that means to you, and what it means to them, not what it means to your commanding officer. Now, that's in a war, which has a very different complementary karma to you than if you're just killing a guy for the $20 he's got in the register at 7-Eleven. But in effect, you did the same thing. You took a life. You took a life that otherwise would have lived and had its experience. Now, what is the consequences of that? Well, we don't know fully what those consequences are, but love does. Love knows everything. So you need to learn. And how are you going to learn? You're going to learn through experience. Maybe by having your life taken, maybe by taking care of other lives in a way that you never did before. There's lots of different ways to meet these situations in our lives as they come up. And the human race is now entering a time when it's going to try to take some responsibility for its actions in the past and in the present to develop a relationship with love, because it's going to realize effectively that it exists. Do you know that it actually exists? Is that your experience? How does that live with you? I was asking you, Taylor.
Oh, I thought it was a
rhetorical
question.
No. You don't get off the hook that easy.
Okay. Well, yes, I know that love exists.
Okay.
Because I come to it and I experience it. It's like what I was talking about with the zero place. I keep choosing to come back there. And I don't know how to communicate how it lives with me, because it's like I come to it in myself and it's just there. It's just a constant.
We'll start practicing how by doing it with your children. You're going to have to communicate it with them. You're going to have to communicate to somebody, communicate to your husband, communicate to the dog. I'm not sure your dog
I haven't
can learn.
gotten good at the communicating part, but I'm not sure he can either.
But you see my point. My point is that it's there, and it's.
But it is, and I experience it with those closest to me. You know, when I choose to come with it, it's just there and it's in the space. And I know that they experience it too, because it's inclusive. And I've never been good at communicating it, ever. And I've tried, and every time I've tried, I fail so incredibly miserably that I just don't even know how to come back to it.
Well, maybe
sometimes.
You're picking people that don't know how to respond. Or maybe you're lousy at both.
Well, I communicate it with you, but it's because I know you're holding that same space when I'm able to communicate it. And there's a receptivity that just allows it to flow. And
okay, if we had a lot more people, and I'm just striving to do that. I'm not necessarily doing it at all well. And
no, but when it's opened up, it's able to be communicated from my experience. But
so isn't it much easier when you're in a group full of people who are actually trying to hold that inclusiveness?
100%, yes.
And if you were suffering from a disease, you would feel like you had a better chance of healing if we're all looking at how you can do that.
Of course.
And so that's kind of what we're attempting to create in the world as a group.
Mm-hmm.
At the Love Foundry, how do you give people the empowerment to carry that around in them as a developing relationship to the world? Now, I don't depend on other people for that. I depend on myself for that. And I depend on love in me to inform me, to give me space, to give me appreciation, to give me information in the experience, because I'm realizing that love can do whatever it wants. It can give it to you philosophically, it can give it to you intuitively, it can give itself to you mentally, it can give itself to you emotionally, but it's not an emotion. It's then love in your emotional body. Mm-hmm. Or it can just physically change the surroundings. It can invade the space and become omnisense. Every one of your senses was formed out of a spiritual urge to make contact with the material world. Through sight, through sound, through touch, and then after the senses, smell and taste, through the sixth sense, which is not intuition. The intuition is actually the seventh sense. The sixth sense is common sense. You have a lot of common sense. Hey, Mom, I found a mushroom. Let's chop it up and put it in the salad. And you have a common sense that says, we don't know that mushroom. It could be a death cap. It could be something that poisons us. It could be someone that kills us. So we don't eat them until we know what we're eating. So you have common sense, which comes from humans killing themselves eating poisonous mushrooms. And fortunately, it develops eventually a realization that that's true. Why don't we pay attention? And maybe other berries, like deadly nightshade berries, are not good to eat either. So you tell your kids, don't eat it if you find it out there in the woods. And I grew up in Alaska, where you go out and eat the huckleberries and the blueberries, and you eat other things that you find in the woods. So you have to inform your children, don't be eating anything. There's only some things that we can eat. If you never take your kids anywhere where there's nature around them, then you don't think to teach them stuff like that. But it just becomes a common sense thing. And Google is maybe human common sense turned into digital programming. But that's fine. We'll take it whatever way we get it. Now, intuitive sense is entirely different. That takes you into the world of love, and it takes you into the mind of all those that experience love and all that they have learned, and trust, and allows you to know what anything in the universe knows. Anything, if you need to know it. And wow, that's a breathtaking possibility. So there's lots of things open to us if we don't restrict ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you choose against love, you choose against everything that functions in love, like intuition. Now, humans had intuition. We had intuition big time, way back in the day. We didn't know anything mentally because we hadn't developed our minds. We didn't know things emotionally very sophisticatedly. We just felt hungry. We felt sexual attraction. We felt tired. We felt fear when we heard a bear growl. We didn't feel with very much nuance. And we've developed a tremendous amount of nuance in our emotions, but we haven't transcended them to love. That's where we are. So it's about time to learn if you want to be able to heal that tumor that's growing in you. It's possible, but you don't have to figure it out. You see, the thing about the mind is it wants to figure everything out. The thing about the heart is it just wants to love. So now if you do both, if you love and then let the love intuitively demonstrate to you the thinking that's engaged in it. What do you got? Another one? Same one?
Same one.
Okay.
I take one already.
Hi.
Sorry.
Oh, we got an answer out. Hi.
Oh, God.
Ho, ho, Phoenix, you got a haircut. Can you hear me, Phoenix?
Yes.
He's looking off into space. And yeah. He's saying, that's what I thought. You got a nice looking haircut.
What do you say?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
You hear me like this?
He can hear you.
We can hear you perfectly.
Oh,
Nope.
Here comes number 2.
Oh,
Number
I might have to
three.
just keep myself
saying I'm being
muted.
left out.
number 3.
And number 3. You're right.
Number 3 showed up too, huh?
But I think what you said about you know, if there's a group of people in a room.
Hello, Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
Hello, Azrael. Olivia's, she's bailed on taking care of her brothers and let you have them back.
So an hour is kind of her limit.
Yeah, well, I can understand. Maybe it's ours too. Hi, Azrael. Who the hell are those people, and what are they doing in that little box?
Talking Heads.
Talking Heads.
Phoenix's favorite band.
Well, this just
What
this
is
is a
Talking Beds?
Talking
Talking
Heads.
Heads. It's a pretty damn good band, or was.
Talking Heads?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They still are. They just put out a great album.
Talking Heads in new shoes.
And new shoes. I got my new shoes on, and suddenly
That's a great
everything's right.
Yeah.
Mom, what's button you have if you turn off?
I'm not gonna tell you.
This,
Don't push the red button.
But I thought maybe we could close out by holding just some space for within ourselves, because we talked about how, like, if we do this as a group, we strengthen it for everyone else, and for anyone and everyone else who is listening to this, that they can simultaneously both give to everyone else who's listening and receive from us and from everyone else that's listened to it, and we can hold just a little space for healing.
You haven't been doing
Now,
that?
damn it, Seb, we're supposed to do it the
I've
whole
been doing
conversation.
that, but I think it's good to bring it right into the space, to speak it into the space. And
Okay,
let people,
I agree with that.
Let
I'm just
people.
kidding. Yeah,
have
if
that
if
moment.
you're having this kind of a conversation, if you're working on bringing love into the space, it's a full-time job, and it doesn't interfere with any other thing you're doing. So hold it. You can still hold a package you can hold a UPS package in your hands while you're holding love, or you can set it down and continue to hold it. It is fatiguing at first because you haven't done it, and it occupies the place where your emotions are busy jumbling up your life, but you can do it. And if you do it, after a while, you realize it feels good because it's giving you a positive investment in yourself and in the environment. So Seb's right. We should be conscious of doing that. And it's hard to do it when you've got 3 little ones all around you. But if you love them and know that, then it becomes easy to do. You don't let their distractions distract you from doing that. And that's why it's good. It's good to have that. It's good to realize you can do it no matter how many phoenixes are in the space with you. Sometimes it's a little challenging, I'll admit, especially when they're uncomfortable about something. But then you've always got Olivia there to press into service, help out. So healing with love doesn't require knowing everything about the disease or knowing everything about what's going on. It just requires knowing that you're responsible for whatever it is and applying love under the same contract. If you're responsible for the disease, you're responsible for the love. And when you bring it, the disease yields. Love is the ultimate healer. All disease of any kind, you can think it's something else. You were born with a club foot, but all disease is the result of inhibiting love, inhibiting soul life, which is love, in your life. So stop doing that. Start giving yourself power. You don't feel that you have the power of love because its power is not transmitting into your consciousness as an active dynamic. Gravity is. If you step off a porch, you don't expect yourself to float away. So don't think that love is any different. It's there and it's powerful and it's giving itself to you. If you make yourself conscious of that, then you use it. You have it. And you can start the beginning of healing yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, every way in which you need it. Okay. See you later. What happened? Taylor's still there, right?
Yeah, she took herself out of the studio.
These kids, it's amazing how they just overtake you, isn't it?
It's like the sea.
Well, they want in on the deal. They want to be part of what's going on. They just don't quite know how yet. So, all right, Seb, do you have any closing remarks to this conversation? Or you just want to hit the button and bail?
Only, I would just like to add, if there's any confusion in any of that, which I'm sure there are, that anything karmic is only action taken in the past that was a rejection of love, and that to take on love now is whether, because I think for a lot of people, when they hear something that's karmic, they think of it almost like it's punishment, and it's like it's this defined thing that comes in that can't be, but it's exactly the same as something that you're doing to yourself now. It's just happened in the past, and by taking that embrace of love and bringing that in is exactly how you work it out anyway. Like it's the proving it to life that you're choosing love now. And there's
okay,
nothing.
But remember, you're defining it in intellectual terms.
Correct.
So now whatever anyone thinks about it, it's not real. It's intellectual, which is a discussion we're having in our mind in the absence of love. Because if love is filling your mind, then all those words you're using look different, take on a different atmosphere, because it just informs you of its livingness, of its connectedness to all that which you separated yourself from. And the intimacy of what you've given up by rejecting love suddenly is there with you. It's there in your heart. It's there in your sense of separation. It's there in your sense of loss, your sense of, oh my God, I'm pushing away life when I don't want to do that. I want to retain my sense of group union with life. And if some part of life is out of balance with itself and is approaching me with energy that is not healthful to my wholeness of it, then I want love to fix that. I want love to fix them. I don't want them to be lost either. And that kind of embrace has such a love of wholeness in it. It has such a completed sense of union that any separation in ourselves from that union is painful. It's diminishing. And you don't have to have that diminishment. You can have that inclusiveness no matter what everyone else is doing. What everyone else is doing on the earth right now is horrifying compared to love. They're not doing love. They're all doing their anger, their revenge, their violence, their sense of separation, their fear, their anxiety, their appetite. They're all doing their egos because that's what we're full of. We're full of ego. But we're not very full of love in our consciousness. It's here. You're breathing it. But where is it in your consciousness? Where is your embrace of everything that says, I don't want you to be lost to me by your separation or mine. I want that to be perfect and whole as it is in essence. In the spiritual kingdoms, it's whole and unified and joyful and ecstatic and embracing. Down here in the material world, it all appears to be jumbled and separate and isolated because we are not at a state where we're embracing love, changing that. So don't let that be your limitation. Don't define love thoughtfully. Embrace it personally. Embrace it with your sensation. Embrace it with your demand upon yourself to enjoy it, which you will at a certain point. To someone who's lived in isolation and separativeness for a long time, it can at first, too much love at first can create a sense of insecurity and a sense of, wait a minute, I got to get back. This is overwhelming. It's too much. And it could be very much too much. So that's why free will of any individual has to be the pace at which you move deeper into union with life, union with love, union with every other being in it. And realize that in their essence, they are love. In their essence, they are not the monsters they are demonstrating themselves to be because they took your parking lot at the market or because they shot at you in war. There's just the animation going on in their uncontrolled ego, which can be a problem if you're in the environment, but it doesn't change the reality that the problem they're having is a separation from love. And if you have enough love going on in your nature, you're not going to be shooting at them either, even though you took the job. So this is a stage of human experience that we're all in, and disease is everywhere, everywhere. And the only way we're going to eradicate that is by realizing it's not real. It's simply an absence of love in some organ in your body or in your emotional body or in your mental body. And once you fill that space with love, the disease cannot coexist with you. It has to go. It has to be given up. And so, and you have the power to do that. And when you're sick with something that's threatening you, you got to pick up the pace. You got to work at it a little harder. And you've got the belief that you don't have any power over it working against you. And that, where'd that belief come from? It's your own belief. From all those people who had cancer and died from it. From all those people who suffered from some disease they couldn't control. Or someone who told them this is the way it is. You have nothing you can do about it. Everybody in our family gets blood disease and dies by the time they're 50, So, okay, I'm condemned to it too. Oh, I guess that's a shame. I was hoping for a longer life. It's not true. None of that is true. All of that is just prehistory trying to tie us to the past. And we buy into it. My family is just hot-headed people. We get angry easily, like the Irish like to say. Well, yes, certain groups have tendencies, but that doesn't mean you have to. So you got to take control and decide, if I put this energy that I don't know a lot about into my life as an energy of life, not a feeling I have or don't have, but a specific energy that has its own powers to do things. And it has power over everything, because it was created by it. Everything in the created universe was created by love. It's the only creator. The only ruler, the only king, as the litany says. So if you let that be true, then having a relationship with it that's dynamic can be really beneficial, particularly to your health.
I think that's a good place to
Yeah,
stop.
hit the button, Seb. They've had enough of
Thank
us
you, everyone.
driving them nuts.
Yeah, if you made it to the end, thank you. Well done.